Hi everyone, welcome once again to another episode of the Growth Clean podcast. My name is Tochko Koro, and on today's episode we have Joel Lopez, and we discuss resolving conflict in marriages, improving communication, general advice for keeping your marriage running in the long term, and how competition affects your marriage. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the show. Hi Joel, welcome to Growth Clean podcast. How are you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Bright and early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed here, ready to chop it up with you, brother.
Yeah, Joel is another interesting person I had to get on the show. So I'm really excited about this episode. So thanks man for coming to the show.
You you got it, man. You reached out and I was like, oh man, yeah, let's. I seen your guest list. You had some heavy hitters. I was like, all right, I'll be honored to be on here and speak to you as well.
All right. Thanks a lot again, man. So would you mind telling us a bit about yourself?
Yeah. My name is Joel. I consider myself a regular dude.
Yeah.
I um been married for 17 years. Been
Mm-hmm.
with my wife a little over 22 years or 23 years now. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's been a while. Uh I have 5 kids. I just had my fifth kid. She's like 4 or 5 months old now. And yeah, my goal, on Twitter is I like to say what's on my mind. I like to joke. I like to have fun, but my heart is
Mm-hmm.
for marriages. I've had friends who have gone through divorces and it's heartbreaking and it kind of, the breakup that happens with that. And to me, marriage is just kind of like the bedrock of a
Yeah.
lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had struggles in my marriage as
Mm-hmm.
far as like this is the woman of my dreams, and then we kind of went through a rough patch,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was like, all right, how do we get back to being how it was before? So that's kind of where a lot of my idea and content comes from, just things that I notice, things around marriage specifically, because to me, it's just everything else comes from marriage. Raising kids, it comes from the marriage. Like I've noticed even when my wife and I are like not good, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not as good a dad when we're not good. But when we're great, when I'm pouring into her, like it's just natural that it pours into the kids.
Yeah.
So that's my perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. So there's this interesting set of videos you posted on Twitter about how you got married to the woman of your dreams and it turned out becoming a nightmare. Do you like mind talking about that?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. Did you have a specific question around that, or did you
Yeah,
want me to just
like
talk about
just
it?
let's just talk about it. So
Okay,
how
yeah,
did a woman of your dreams turn into your worst nightmare?
yeah, because it was so there's this like human nature thing where
Mm-hmm.
you want this thing so bad, right? Like whatever it is. And so for me, it was my wife. Like I wanted her so bad. We were long distance for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to see her all the time. All I wanted to do was be with her. And then, like for me, as soon as we got married, it was like, okay, now I have to take care of her.
Mm-hmm.
So my focus went from her now to like, okay, I got to make money. I got to improve. And I would tell myself that I'm doing these things for her, right? Like, hey, the
Yeah.
reason I'm working out hard is everything is because I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for you. But there came a point where I really wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for me.
Yeah.
And so it really was like I stopped doing the things that I did when we
Mm-hmm.
were dating or before we were married during the marriage. And then it was like one day you kind of wake up, it's like, hey, it's not it's not how it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? And so that it was me taking responsibility of the, this isn't how I want it to be because of me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, it wasn't like so much like a nightmare, like oh my God, I'm gonna leave. But it's just hard. It's never been this hard. Why is it so hard?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people go through that in their marriage. And then it was like once like you're married and you start working because you want to provide for your wife,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have kids, that's a whole another ball game. Like
Yeah.
you're not really prepared for it. Like I wanted kids. We waited to have kids, but when they
Mm-hmm.
come, it's a lot of work. I just had my fifth, and it's like it's not easier. Like we're still not sleeping. Like I woke up a few times last night because the baby's crying,
Mm-hmm.
and even though I'm not the one that gets up, it's still a challenge. So from from those experiences, it was like, hey, do the things that you did on the front end. Keep doing those things. Don't lose that. It's like I'm a big sports guy, so
Mm-hmm.
it's like don't don't do the stuff that got you drafted and then stop doing those things
Yeah.
later on. You keep on, you have to keep the great ones are the ones that keep that same attitude of like, I just got drafted or I just got snubbed, right? Like,
Yeah.
like 30 teams passed me over. So I have that chip on my shoulder. Well, kind of the same energy in marriage. Like, hey, I married you because I wanted you. I'm not going to take you for granted. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's, one of the key things is you begin to take them for like, this was the best, most beautiful woman in my dreams, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
taking her for granted. That that I think really is the core idea. I'm taking you for granted, and I shouldn't. Let me return to the love of my life. The Bible talks about, treating your wife as like the always being enamored with the dough of your wife, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that was it's true. It's true. Like we've been doing this thing for over 20 years now, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm still blown away by her. But a lot of it is being intentional about it, like me taking care of myself, me giving her the attention that she needs, but also like taking her out of the house because she's always mom. She's
Mm-hmm.
always mom. So let me take her out of the house so she can just be my wife.
Yeah.
Because you wanna get freaky with the wife and everything, but it's just like, dude, she's been a mom all day. She's had kids all over her all day. Like you think you're just gonna like get to the room and be like, hey, let's go, mama, let's do this. It's like, no, you got to give her some time. And it's sometimes it's easier said than done. But yeah, that's kind of like the core of it there.
Yeah. So, during those periods, what was your mindset like when things were so bad and you started taking that for granted? Wait, did you feel like you made a mistake or you just needed to work on it? Did you ever feel like, oh, did I make a
Um,
mistake by marrying this person?
not so much a mistake because for me it's like once I did it,
Mm-hmm.
it's done. So
Yeah.
there's no going back. So it really for us it was, do I want to be like in a roommate's
Yeah.
marriage where it's just like we're just roommates? Is because I that was never on the table
Mm-hmm.
for us. It was like, oh, we're gonna get divorced. It
Yeah.
was, are we gonna am I just gonna check out and just be roommates and we're just gonna do this for the kids?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, we could do that, but the kind of the way that we're wired as well, if we're gonna do this, then we might as well do it right. So like
Mm-hmm.
this is not acceptable for us.
Yeah.
Even though we're not happy with each other, we're upset. Like let's go ahead and push forward and like get over and work through a lot of the issues that we have. And a lot of them were basically like communication stuff. Like, I have a different view of how things should be done.
Mm-hmm.
She has a different view of how things should be done, not values wise, mind you. It was
Yeah.
just how things would get like, uh a big thing that couples argue with is money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, it would be something like, hey, I took the time to figure out what the budget is, how much we're going to spend, and this is the plan because uh we want to buy a house or make some other purchase or something like that, right? That's my
Mm-hmm.
plan.
Mm-hmm.
um but her is like, well, I got stuff to take care of around the house, so the house needs this, the house needs this, the house needs this. She's trying to take care of me, my house, and my family.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes she would go over the budget because she was taking stuff for that care of the house. I would get mad because I'm like, dude, I I made all this effort to take care of the budget and you went through it. But then for me, it was having this. Hey, she just wants to take care of me and my house, and
Mm-hmm.
she's taking care of it, and she's going to take care of it now. So she's seeing the immediate, but not seeing the kind of the long term.
Yeah.
So it was that back and forth where she's like, hey, Joel's not trying to be like controlling with the money. He's like, the reason is because he has this plan for these other purchases or this other stuff for our family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a really the give and take and the giving of grace. And going back to your question, that was a big part of it. Was, we're in a rough patch,
Mm-hmm.
let's give each other grace, because on the front end, like, I don't know if are you married?
No, 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 no.
Okay. Well, on the front end, when you're dating somebody, like you give them a lot of leeway because it's like, oh man, she's so beautiful. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm you so you extend a lot of grace.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow when you've been together for a while and you're tired, right? Like when you're tired, like that there's not a lot of room for grace. And so it's like, hey, let's continue to give each other the grace that we gave each other when we were dating. Like let's do that. So yeah, that's a lot of it.
Yeah, so what role does communication play in marriages? Because I've heard a lot of speakers talk about how communication is important and how I think David Feldman talked about how communication isn't always good. Like over communication is not good because there are some things you should say and there are some things you shouldn't say. So
Mm-hmm.
in your opinion, how does communication help marriage?
So when I'm talking communication,
Mm-hmm.
I have a different perspective on it because I'm
Yeah,
not just talking about like me and you are communicating, right? We're
yeah,
we're
yeah.
we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm talking about communication, talking is part of it, but
Mm-hmm.
it really is like these desires that we have. Communication is broken down into thoughts, actions, and feelings. So
Mm,
there's layers to it, right? So I'm not going to go and like be of the advice of like, hey, these are the things that you should talk about, these are the things that you shouldn't talk about. It's more of the I am an individual
mm-hmm.
in my marriage. I should understand who I am. And most people do not understand who they are, what motivates them, like even outside of like the marriage. Like I had mentioned that I'm kind of a planner.
Mm-hmm.
So my desire is to like plan stuff out and things to be done that way. Whereas my wife is someone who likes to kind of get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't get stuff done so much, and she doesn't plan so much.
Mm-hmm.
So there when I'm talking about like being on the same page, that's where I'm coming from. It's like there people are very different and they just don't realize it. Like simple analogy, right? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
bilingual, so I speak English and Spanish.
Yeah.
I'm speaking English and my wife is speaking Spanish. We would know like, oh, okay, we gotta meet each other in that same language.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas most people don't realize that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
But I can speak Spanish or English like all day. But Spanish, like if we were doing this podcast in Spanish, I would run out in the first like 2 minutes, be like, all right, man, like this is too, it takes too much effort for me.
Yeah.
Whereas my wife would be able to do it like forever.
Mm-hmm.
So her understanding, like I can plan all day and be like, great, let's plan. Let's plan trips. Let's plan like where we're gonna move in a few years. Like let's plan all day. I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
Where she'll be like, hey, we planned for like 2 minutes, and now I got to get stuff done. And then vice versa for me, it's like, hey, like how many things would you like me to take care of around the house?
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, like, I'm kind of beat. So let's meet each other that way. So when I talk about communication, I'm talking about like us coming to like a common place
Mm-hmm.
where we're both understanding each other and the desires that we have individually.
Yeah.
So I want to plan and lead, and she wants to finish and get things done.
Yeah.
How are we going to come together? So it's not so much like, hey, when should I say this or when should I say that? It's these are the desires that I have, and we have a lot more of them. So how can we align them so we're we're fulfilled and we're meeting each other's needs in that way?
Yeah, that makes sense. So on one of your Gumroot courses, you titled it self-destructive patterns in marriage. So do you
Mm-hmm.
mind talking about that? Some of these self-destructive patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was huge. So that
Mm-hmm.
was something that we all do. It's the three R's. It's
Mm-hmm.
resentment, resistance, and revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And we all do it. And this was a pattern that once I saw it, like personally, it's like you can't unsee it. So you do it, you do it at you'll do it at work, you do it at you wherever resentment kind of comes in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And resentment will come in the form of like, oh, I wish I would have, I could have, or I should have. When you're saying those things, that's a sign that resentment is taking a foothold. Now, there's nothing wrong with resentment because you're human,
Mm-hmm.
but it's what happens next. So like, um, say you said something that offended me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have some kind of resentment. towards you.
Mm-hmm.
And so now all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm not going to interact with you on the timeline or something. It's like, I'm going to start pulling away. I'm going to start like not communicating with you. That's kind of the next level of resistance. So you said something, I didn't clear it with you and be like, hey, yo, Tachuku, you said this thing and, I didn't appreciate it or whatever. So I go into resistance.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you any of this stuff. So it's like, I just start kind of cutting you off. We're not talking. And then, like, I don't know, say, you know, you release the next podcast or something, then I'm like, oh, Tachuku was a terrible podcast host. And like, I'm taking my revenge on
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
That's me taking my revenge. And so it could look a lot of different ways, but that's just kind of like a quick example of what that cycle looks like. And you go through it all the time. And in marriage, I was doing it in my marriage. I still do it. But the thing is to recognize it and to be aware of it so that if that resentment does start to take a foothold, it's okay. I don't want this. I don't want this to kind of escalate.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I do go through a full cycle, apologize and be like, hey, I shouldn't have, gone about this way. I'm sorry, because we're human. So the thing isn't that you're like never going to do them again. It's just to be aware of them so that they don't ruin your life and they don't run you without you having any idea that that's what's happening.
Mm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. On the final question, there's something you talked about competing in marriage, because I've noticed that there are some relationships where probably the two spouses are doing similar jobs, or they're probably maybe writers, and there's a little bit of competition of who earns more, who does this more, who does that more. So what's your opinion about competition in marriages? Because I think you've written a tweet about competing in marriages and how the only competition you should do is to outlove each other on, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think it's. I'm former athlete guy. I played football, so like to
Mm-hmm.
me, like competition was everything. I was like, oh, I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna like
Yeah.
run you down. So like that is healthy. Competition is healthy, but it's like not everything that you do is applicable to everything you do. So like
Yeah.
I would compete in my marriage, and then so in my marriage I'd be keeping track. Like I did this, yo, like I did this, like yo, you're gonna keep like, and so part of it is like that scorekeeping. It's like that's not healthy in your marriage because you're there's always going to be somebody who gives more or does more at certain time periods. So it's just setting you up for resentment. That's really what it's going to do. If you're competing that way, like in the writing example, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I outsold you or I wrote better than you,
Mm-hmm.
like how is that supposed to make the other person feel like
Yeah.
like you know like you want to be your spouse's biggest fan. Like there shouldn't be anybody who's a bigger fan of me than my wife. There shouldn't
Exactly.
be anybody who's a bigger fan of my wife than me. If some other dude was like, oh, your wife is the best, like, whoa, that's me, son. Like I am the biggest fan. So it's just I love competition.
Mm-hmm.
I want my kids to compete and win and play hard in the things that
Yeah.
they do. But when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to their marriage, like, hey, this is a different place. Just if you're gonna compete, just be like, I'm gonna give with with no regard of
Mm-hmm.
what you are giving to me. I'm just gonna give. Because you know, I've kept track, and when I keep track, I'm not as happy because it's just like, oh, I did this and this, and you only did this. Like, no, it's not healthy, and
Yeah.
it's not setting the conditions in your marriage for it to be a loving place, a place of peace.
Yeah.
Like when you're in a competition, like, I mean, it's exciting, it's invigorating and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not really peace. Like, I
Yeah.
need my house to be a peaceful place because my kids are here. I'm here. I want this to be a place of rest. I don't want to feel like I have to compete at home. Like, you know, there's enough, like when we leave our doors, when you go outside, when you go on social media, there's enough competition, there's enough like discord.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that here in my house.
Yeah.
I don't need that when I go to bed with my wife. Like I don't need that. Like I want to like do like, you know, cool freaky stuff in bed, have a nice night. Like that's what I want, man. I don't like no it's competition. It's just it's gonna set you up
Yeah.
to it's gonna set you up for resentment, is what I think.
Mhm. So, what is your general advice for keeping your marriage working in the long run?
Well, for us, you know, I'm Christian, so we put God first. So
Hmm.
that's foundational because you're gonna have a lot of disagreements. So, you know, for other people it might be like shared values, but for me, that's God. Like that comes first,
Yeah.
and then my wife comes next. And then after that, I would say, you know, just do the things that you did when you were the effort. So it doesn't have to be so much the things that you did because like you can't take off like I can't just take off on a Wednesday night like, hey baby, let's go check out this restaurant or whatever. Like we got kids, man. So like it's gonna look different, but the effort that you put in to do those things can still be there. So putting forth that same effort that you did to get the girl, to get married, or you know, whatever vice versa it is for the woman,
Hmm.
like keep doing those things because like I don't know who the hell gets married to like be like, man, this was really hard, this was tough, like, you know what, let's get married. It's like, no, usually it's like really easy. It's like, man, this is like the greatest person in the world, it's so easy, I can't wait to marry you,
Hmm.
because it was like you were doing all those things. So that would be my advice, man, is put forth that same first day effort, like you just met her for the first time,
Yeah.
doing it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's the true challenge.
Yeah. It's been great talking to you, man. I really enjoyed this one. So, where can people find you on the internet?
Pretty much Twitter is the only place I really hang out,
Hmm.
at the Wifosexual. So it's TheWifeosexual. And you can find me there. And then on Spotify, I have the Read Your Keys podcast, iTunes, and YouTube. Read Your Keys. So yeah, you can find me on YouTube too.
Yeah. All right, man. By the way, Wifosexual is a nice name. It's very unique.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a nice day.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming this far. I created the program for people feeling stuck, struggling with an addiction, trying to find their path, and want to become whole again. It is called the Self Mastery Program. Please check out the show notes to get a copy, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.